Hello and welcome everyone to this very important video with some very shocking and breaking news from France. France just dismantled its own democracy. So what happened there? Let's take a look and see why it's so shocking and stunning and reverberates around the world where people are in shock. France decided today to jail and put a penalty on the front runner for the presidential election in 2027, Le Pen. So Marine Le Pen is the leader and currently leads in the polls to become the next president of France. And a judge decided, for some very phony reasons, that Le Pen cannot run for president. So let me get this straight. A judge decided to put the front runner for the presidential election in jail and not allow her on top of that to run. The situation in France is very dire, as we know. There are some corrupted elites who run the country, control the media. France is going downhill very rapidly, and we see terrible things happening in France. They have open borders, they have mass migration, they have people tremendously unhappy, there's murder, there's rapes, there are terror attacks, very famous terror attacks, as we all remember, terrible things happening in Paris a few years ago and constantly. And so what's happening is the people of France are standing up and say, we've had enough, we want to keep our country, and we want to keep our lives and futures. We need to vote for another party than the established ones. Macron is not in good standing right now. Le Pen's party is actually the winning party right now. And what happened is that someone decided, let's use some lawfare against that leading candidate. And they actually got through with it. The accusations were pretty phony. It was something where the party of Le Pen got some funds from the European Commission to be used in the European elections. And what they did is they basically used some of that money also for the national elections, which is something that you can be sure a lot of people do. And even if there would be a decision that was wrong, and even if there would be a sentence on it, that's all fine. Do whatever you need to do. But don't ban Le Pen from running for president. How is this even related? If you think she did something wrong, just, say what the sentence is and that's fine. But to put a ban on her to run for president, this is taking it to a whole new level. And it's a horrible look for democracy. It's a shocking look for democracy. Because if a judge can decide who you as the people are allowed to vote for, and then decides that the leading candidate is not allowed to run anymore, you are basically telling tens of millions of people that their vote doesn't count. And that is not democracy. That is the end of democracy. So let's take a quick look at the political situation in France. So first of all, the news, we see here all over the place, Le Pen has been sentenced. People all over the place, especially in America, but also in Europe, are saying this is outrageous. We see here a rally of Le Pen. She is the leading candidate. So millions of people behind her in France who want to put a stop to the demise of their own country. Here's some little summaries: pledge to immediately begin mass deportations. They have millions of people who don't belong to France. She pledged to exit NATO and hold a referendum on leaving the EU. Again, Trump also said things about NATO. That's a whole different discussions. We can agree or disagree on these things. It doesn't matter. The people of France want her. You cannot tell the people of France they can't get her unless you dismantle democracy. Referendum on leaving EU. This is the right of the people to vote on these things. Everyone who says we don't want referendums of the people on anything is anti-democratic. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. All that led to her being sentenced and jailed. She's now going on TV and saying, I'm not going to take this. I am going to appeal this. And we also have here President Trump actually reacting. I will get to this in a second. He's, of course, going to digest this. He cannot react the same day, but he's saying that's a big deal. She has been banned from running for president despite being the leading candidate. That sounds like this country, the United States, because the same thing was attempted to do with Trump. And that's very important. Now, I want to also give you a quick overview here what the situation, the political exact situation was in terms of the polls. So when we look this up in Grok very quickly, political situation in France, the New Popular Front as a left-wing alliance, right? And they have 182 seats. Now the National Rally, which is Marine Le Pen's and Jordan Bardella's party, 143 seats. That was in the last election. And more importantly, in the next election, the projections are very clear. The polling about Marine Le Pen. So before her conviction, one day ago, she polled at 36% ahead of everyone else. Gabriel Attal at 22%, way before the second guy. And then Jean-Luc Mélenchon, sorry for my French, pardon my French, above 10%. So the nationalist right bloc, which includes her party, the Reconquête and others, nearly at 45%. So clear winning bloc here in this complex French landscape. So it's very clear that she was on the winning track. And even Grok says that if Le Pen's appeal succeeds, she would likely remain the frontrunner, capitalizing on the RN's momentum and her established voter base. Her chances would hinge on whether the left and center unite against her in a runoff, as they have historically done. But even then, it's not clear that they would win against her. It's likely that she would win, in my opinion. So that's the situation in France. So they literally put the frontrunner in jail, which is horrible. And the sentence is actually 5 years, and they reduce it to 2 years, but they also prevent her from running. Well, she's prevented from running for 5 years, but that includes the 2 years now. So all of that, as I said, highly disturbing. And I think, what we see in France, just to give you a little analysis on that, is also something where not as bad, but we saw some things like that in Germany, where a de facto financial coup happened in the Bundestag with Merz. I made a video on that got a lot of views. So Germany, right after the current election in February, the very recent election, the parties got voted out that are currently in charge. But Merz, the CDU candidate, went into the Bundestag, into the parliament, and basically brought together the old parliament, because he couldn't do that with the new one. Right after the election, right after the German people de-elected these people, he brought them together in the last week possible, right after the election, and changed the constitution of Germany to get a crazy spending pro-war budget through, literally against the will of the people, using the political votes that just got de-elected in an official election, because he couldn't achieve that in the new Bundestag, in the new parliament. So these kinds of behaviors are not just bad, they are a catastrophe for democracy. Of course, what France just did is way worse. Imagine you have an election and someone gets elected president, and next thing you know, the police shows up, puts that person in handcuffs, and puts the new president in jail. How would you call that? That is a coup d'etat. That is the end of democracy. Now, if you put that person in handcuffs and put them in jail before they win the election, when they're the front runner, it's not that far off from a coup. It's actually very similar. So we are one step away from really totalitarianism and dismantling democracy just head on, not indirectly like it happened in Germany, but directly. I had a lot of discussions on my last video on the German constitutional change against the will of the people, literally, explicitly against the new parliament, using the old parliament. And I said that wouldn't fly in the United States. I got a lot of pushback, actually from Americans, from frustrated Americans, from some of you guys who said, well, Joe, you're delusional. The US is also extremely bad. The US is in the hands of fake news, of a cartel of bad people who are anti-democratic. They wanted to put Trump in jail. They actually convicted Trump. They also would try to change the constitution. But here's the point. You're right. The United States is not safe from these things, but they never actually happen. There's always a last-ditch attempt, success in preventing them. Whereas in Germany, it just happened. Whereas in France, even worse things happened. So I'm not saying that the United States is safe from these anti-democratic coup attempts, but in the end, the American people tend to stand up and not go that far. For example, if you would have an election and Congress would change, and after that election, in the last week of the old Congress, they would cast a vote to change the constitution, I think it wouldn't fly, right? I think there would be a civil war, there would be unrest or something. People would not stand for it. So let's see what's happening in France. And I want to conclude that video with some thoughts what needs to happen next. What needs to happen next is we cannot allow this to happen. Right? It's in our own mutual interest of other European countries, the United States, of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, like the whole Western Hemisphere, that we do not allow countries like Germany, now France, and also the United Kingdom, where people get jailed for free speech, for voicing their opinions and concerns. But of course, what's happening in France is a whole next level to put the presidential frontrunner in jail. We cannot stand for this, and there needs to be external and internal interference with this. The United States has to say something. Elon Musk already commented on this and said, of course, it's insane and outrageous. Just happened yesterday. Let's see what happens next. Trump already indicated that this is not okay. And I think what needs to happen is the United States. That's the only country right now that has an actionable government that has a democratic spirit to it. I think these guys have to do something. The ambassador of the US has to say in France, dudes, listen closely. You can't do that. Stop it, right? Stop it in the appeals court, whatever you have to do, but stop it. They should call Macron and say, we are not going to stand here watching you or whoever turn France into an authoritarian, anti-democratic regime. We cannot let them do that. And maybe you say, well, it's up to the French ruling class to determine what happens to the French people. But it's not that simple. There is a certain covenant, a certain agreement in the Western world that we are democracies. And once you start suppressing free speech, jailing people for speaking up like in the UK, taking clear actions against your own people like in Germany, and doing the worst thing so far in France, putting your political opponents who are now frontrunners supported by over 10 million French votes in jail, the US has to intervene, in my opinion, diplomatically. You have to tell them, stop it. If you do not adhere to democratic principles, you will be in big trouble. That has to happen behind the scenes. It also has to happen in public to some extent. All these countries are connected. If you think you're safe because you're in Australia or you're in Canada or you're in Germany or Sweden, you're not safe. If you allow one of these countries to fall like this, your country can be next. We have to stand up for freedom, for democracy, especially in these times that are very critical times. And I will conclude the video with that. Always, I'm not just commenting randomly on politics here. The reason why I care about freedom and democracy, the ability of all of us to self-govern ourselves, to have the right for free media, which is not the case in most of Europe, like free media by the pioneers and for the pioneers, for the people who built the future. Why we need that is because we are entering the age of AGI. Changes that are going to happen to our economies, to our jobs, to everything around us in the next 36 months will be absolutely dramatic and world-changing. Hey, if you want to stay ahead of politics everywhere, join us in Pioneerlands. We track politics, capital markets, and AGI disruption. It's free and self-organized for people who look through the noise and deception. Link in the description. Let's get back to the video. If we make the best of it, it could be amazing. It could be an age of abundance. But if you're sitting there disorganized, divided, diverse, with open borders, rape and murder on the streets, corrupted elites, and lying media, while AGI is rolling over us, there will be no escape. It will be horrible. And most people will perish in that onslaught and transformation that's happening. So the first step is to handle the future and handle this massive economic disruption that is imminent, that is happening as we speak, is to get organized and not be in total disarray. We need to get rid of these corrupted and lying elites, of their media cartels that keep distorting reality and keep most voters sea of noise so they can't see the signal. That has to stop, because otherwise we cannot take the right actions for ourselves, cannot be self-governed, and we need to be self-governed and effective for what's to come. I hope JD Vance, Trump, and Elon are speaking up and intervening in this France debacle. I hope all of you who are in France do something about it, voice your concerns, and make clear this is not an option. And let's hope democracy is coming back to France and this gets rectified very quickly. Thanks for watching. See you very soon.